Okay, so let's move on to the next family in the carnivora, which is the Ursidae. So you know the constellations. Ursus is one of the Ursus Major is one of the constellations. So the bears are really a different story. They are, as fierce as their reputation is. Actually, they have very much reduced teeth compared to most of the carnivores. They have, for one thing, their premolars are almost, in fact, are vestigial, effectively not there. Their molars and premolars, their cheek teeth, are not particularly sharp. They're bunodont. So if you feel your own, those are bunodont. They won't have sharp cusps on there. Sometimes they're called wrinkled molars. So you see the complex cusps there. So this is I guess it's kind of they're omnivores. Bears are famously, especially black bears, are famously omnivores. They eat everything, anything. They'll spend half a day digging up ant larvae, or they'll kill a deer if they can, or a fawn. They'll eat carrion. They'll break into people's cabins and drink the beer. So they're they're opportunists. If it smells interesting, they'll go after it. So those teeth reflect that. Kind of all-purpose teeth in many ways. At the same time, though, of course, they are in the carnivora, and they do have very large canines, and they really do have a fierce reputation for a reason, which is what they can do. We know what they can do, but they almost have a diastema. Look at that. And if you find bear scat, almost every time it's just plant material. During the spring, not so much here that I know of anyway, but in Colorado, the bear scat in June smells like licorice faintly because they eat wild fennel, which is related to licorice. There are many color variants to bears. So they're not always black bears. Sometimes they're brown, sometimes they're silvery, sometimes they're kind of a mottled color. This was in 2019 in Narragansett, that picture there. We've had a bear come into Peacedale. They've been spotted in North Woods and other places around. So I don't know that we have a population, you could say, here in Rhode Island where it's a population that is breeding and growing in Rhode Island, as opposed to being just sort of a larger population in southern Rhode Island. It extends into southern New England, extends into Rhode Island. I don't know, but they are probably increasing their population, maybe even having a breeding population here. Gray seals. So these are in the phocids. So the phocids are the seals. We don't have sea lions here. So seals, these are they have the rear limbs or make them almost helpless outside the water. They can just wriggle around. And we have two species that are really hard to tell apart. And by the way, I didn't even mention last time with the whales. We have lots of other whale species out there and dolphin species as well, but they're uncommon or rare enough that we're not considering them in this class. However, we will go out and see these. We'll see harbor seals. We might see gray seals. So in some years when we go out to Rome Point to observe, some years we do, after we analyze the photos when we get back, if somebody has a telescopic lens, I lost my lens, is broken now, so I can't do that. But if you do, we have analyzed it and have seen gray seal in among them, very, very distinctly. So we thought it was all harbor seals. Biggest count at Rome Point that I found so far is 121, which I counted one year. It was actually in 2020, I think. Yeah. They are so common now, gray seals are, that there's even thought of having culling them. The adult telling apart, this is difficult. So a large male does have sort of a so-called Roman nose, sort of a relatively large nose. It's very hard to tell. And the way you tell them from harbor seals, which is the common seal here, is to basically focus on the harbor seal first, get to know the harbor seal, and then go back and look at the gray seal. They look pretty similar, don't they? By the way, don't count on spots or darkness or any of that in the face. There's no mistaking this big male here. but you don't always see big males. Here's the scientific sort of thing is that when you look at a harbor seal, it's almost endearing. And I think what that means is it has almost human baby, or puppies basically kind of have human baby-like qualities. So it has that look to it, and sort of kind of maybe makes you feel that way. When you look at a gray seal, it's not. They just don't have it. They don't have that. They're nice seals, but they don't have that puppy look. Otherwise, you can't really tell much about compare the two really by their spots or anything like that. Common seal, harbor seal, they are in Europe. They're here on the West Coast, East Coast, a lot of places, very common. And they are they and the gray seals, it's a great testimony to the power of the National Marine Protection Act, that they are back. Something about the harbor seal, the teeth have cusps, so they're highly specialized for grabbing fish and holding on to them. So they'll go out and catch cod and Atlantic salmon and whatever else is out there. They happen to have a very large auditory bulla, which is interesting. Otherwise, they kind of have almost a bear-like skull there. But yeah, those three cusps, they actually kind of curl back. Now, this skull here is one of the most common skulls. If you find a mammal skull, especially one that's a carnivore, this is probably the one you're going to find. And I see it posted. Somebody will post on social media. What is this? And I'll look, and it's probably a raccoon. And then people will say, it's a bear. Oh, it's a coyote. It's a fisher cat. And, I just kind of stay silent. And then eventually I try to clear that up, kind of like the bears, their cheek teeth are bunadot. They're not sharp. The cusps aren't sharp. And does that make sense? They're omnivores. They eat, what do they eat? The term for them is trash pandas, right? They could be in a dumpster on Fifth Avenue, New York City, or they could be out in the middle of the wilderness in New Hampshire. They oftentimes walk along shores of muddy of lakes, ponds, especially where there's crayfish. Pretty much what they're after are tadpoles, like green frog tadpoles. They might go after. They have kind of a rounded skull. It's not long like a dog, not short like a cat, like a felid. The teeth are bunadot. That's usually a dead giveaway right there. There's quite a few teeth, kind of nice long row of teeth there. They don't have a well-developed carnassial pair, being an omnivore. So that's that. Let's take a look at the mustelids. Mustelids are the weasel family, but it also includes wolverines. And one time it actually included the skunks. Skunks have been split out into their own family, but they're still closely related to mustelids. They also have very well-developed scent glands as well, includes badgers as well. We don't have badgers here, but they are fairly short legs, so these are not great runners in terms of running across landscapes and being able to see up high. Weasel-shaped, long body, short legs, oftentimes long tail, and they are carnivorous, and since they are not going to go after plant material very often, or acorns or something like that. It includes otters. Anyways, take a look here. Here's the thing to look for. There are certain things in this lab, and put the specimens that you really need to look closely at and focus on those. Say these are the hard ones. There's not that many of them. If you look at the last two in the upper cheek tooth row, which is a key in all the mammals. So look at the upper cheek tooth row, go back. What do the molars look like? And what you have here is that last molar turns in. I don't know why. Almost like it's just getting out of the way. I think the rostrum got shorter, and if you want to keep the cheek tooth, well, it has to turn to the side. I'm making that up, but it's like what happened. It forms an angle like that. So a V, you could say it's a V. And that last upper cheek tooth right there, which is a molar, by the way, it's a dumbbell shape that is constricted in the middle, wide on the either side. Badger, otter, marten, mink, they look fairly similar. Another thing is the postglenoid process locks. So the jaw, where it connects here, pick up like a human skeleton or a bear skeleton, the jaw is going to fall off. Theirs does not. It actually is. It grows within the flange. I don't think it ever. Not that, by the way, our jaws does not come disconnected at all either. It's held together with tendons and muscle, but the bone itself is not held on by other bone. In this case, there's a flange. Okay, it's a flange. You can't take it out without breaking bones. Probably has to do with, avoiding, having have a stronger bite without having the risk of it coming out. Take a look at these. You include the river otter, which are now here they're now in Rhode Island, they're in New England, they're in New York, they're all over. They're in Oklahoma, they're in Florida. They have major comeback. They and the beavers are another great example of a conservation victory. And the fishers we'll see as well. Feet are completely webbed. That's easy. We all have webs. Apparently that's an easy mutation to evolve. Tail is thick and tapered. Very funny looking tail. But otherwise, their behavior is pretty obvious. How about their skull? Did I say something about their skull here? No. The skull here is probably maybe the more confusing ones. Look at this last molar. It's not dumbbell shaped. It does turn in though. You have a mustelid. Well, what else could it be? It's sort of rounded. Just realize it's a mustelid. It's not the others. It's odd looking. It's maybe just kind of one of those oddballs you want to set aside in your mind. If I pick this up, I'm probably going to puzzle over it first. I would generally think badger when I see this, but it's not. It does look similar to a badger skull. We don't have badgers here. So this is the fisher. It used to be martes. Now it's Picania pinanti. Don't call it a fisher cat. That's a colloquial term, and it's hard not to say that, but it's not a cat, not related to cat other than being carnivores, and just really causes confusion. They do not make any noise at all. Hardly at all, grunts at most. When people say they heard a fisher cat scream, they didn't hear a fisher cat scream. They heard something else, probably a raccoon or eastern screech owl or something like that, or a baby rabbit being killed or something. No, they don't make much of a sound at all. It's a funny thing how people think they heard them, and even people who don't even get out much say, "Oh, I heard a fisher cat." Like, no, you didn't hear a fisher cat. There's no fisher cat. One thing. Fisher, just call it a fisher. That's all you need. They are a great success story. They were reintroduced, I think, in New York, and they spread throughout all of the East Coast now, part of New England. And they are a very strong predator in the sense that they, like weasels, can take down prey like a heavy rabbit or something that's larger than them, considerably larger than them. The skull. I don't know what to tell you about the skull. It's a mustelid. It's of this size. It's not an otter. It's too big for a weasel. That just narrows it down. Process elimination. They really specialize in porcupines, but there are no more porcupines in the States. Obviously, they can't specialize too much from those. They're very, actually as common as they probably can be here. Not that that's common. But on trail cameras, I've bet at least 3 of the 7 groups or so will get that. Long-tailed weasel. This is one that actually is probably more common than we think it is around here, but we rarely see them, rarely get them on trail cams, but they're just kind of around. See them just about anywhere. It's kind of outside of towns and cities. They actually have a white phase during the winter, and they catch rodents. And they also even catch small rabbits, but they are constantly moving. I don't know how to what extent they're actually out at night, but they are just moving around. They move fast. They go down into burrows or into holes, and they'll kill just about anything they can. Look at that last dumbbell-shaped molar turned in like that with the angle. So you got a mustelid. It's small. It's got to be a weasel. We're just going to focus on the long-tailed weasel, not the short-tailed. We have a short-tailed here. Then the mink. This is really common in Rhode Island, and one of the best places to see them is down at Point Judith, where the jetty, or any place like that along the coast, over into all along there, along the rocks along the coast. But they're also right here in town along the Tri-Pond area. They're always along water courses. And why is that? Because they actually swim like a fish. They are amazing, excellent swimmers. They dive, swim better than an otter. They are really, but they ripple on the land and run just fine like a weasel. So it's like a weasel. I've seen them in Colorado jump into a raging stream in Colorado and be carried down and then find their way out and then shake like a and then they're back again. Like they come back to life again. I mean, I literally just like turned. I seen the like, if you'd thrown a black sock out there in the raging water, it would have been no different. They just turned upside down and then just sort of got washed up in the willows, climbs up in the willows and runs off. So they allowed themselves to be carried down. Weasel-like skull, but it is very much a mustelid, as you will see. It's got the typical mustelid skull. Mephidity. We have one here we're gonna focus on, which is Mephitis. Mephitis, which is this is the skunk, striped skunk, very common here. The last molar is square shaped, doesn't turn in. And a square shaped last molar, not really square shaped, but it's, you can imagine a square sort of placed over it. There's no mistaking, of course. Sometimes they're almost all white instead of have very little black on them. Some are mostly black. But the skull is it's kind of, you can imagine that's kind of like a mustelid right there. Look at that. But I think the skull is distinctive just in we use process elimination. When you look at that, like, well, what else could it be? It's not a felid. It's not, think about the other carnivores it could be. And process elimination, get down to those 4 or 5 difficult skulls, and you'll have the skulls you immediately recognize, and then you have the skulls that you puzzle over. Okay, so set those aside, the ones you puzzle over, and use process elimination on those. Finally, the felids. So felids are the cats, and they have a very shortened rostrum. I don't know why I have that not listed here, but anyway, a shortened rostrum. Their eyes, they have stereoscopic vision, so they can see right in front of their nose really well. Very much, usually the wild, they're usually more out at night than during the day, but they're not strict about that. Very sharp, extremely sharp cheek teeth. They're called cecodont cheek teeth. So the cheek teeth are basically like, well, they're shearing. Strong carnassial pair. But here's the key there. Is if it's not good enough, it's rounded and a shortened rostrum. If that doesn't do it for you, then look at this last little peg-like molar, vestigial, right there. A little peg-like molar, tiny peg-like molar in the upper jaw. That's cats. You can't tell the cats apart, the domestic cat from a bobcat. But feral cats, domestic cats, kill millions of birds and other wild mammals, and it's really a bad deal to have them running around. Yeah, I know people do it, but for one thing, they're out there killing wildlife. The second thing is they themselves are going to get killed. You're going to get attached to this cat. You love your cat. It's going to get run over or killed by a coyote. You just can't do it. You got to have them inside, and they're fine inside. The bobcat, telling it apart from the Cephalus catus. Not that you're going to mistake it. We don't have any links here, but when you see a grainy picture, like a trail cam picture of a wild cat, there's a really quick way to identify it. And you get people posting these pictures like, oh, is this a mountain lion? And it has a tail this big. And it's big. Okay, yeah. But here's what to look for. It's really quite simple, because you don't have many house cats that look like this, and that's what that is you have flanks, spots on the belly and legs. You see spots not just on the legs, but on the belly and the flank, basically the butt, not so much on top. Don't go with ear tufts. There's house cats like that. Don't even use the tail much, because there's some house cats that have short tails. Go with the spots. Speckles. In fact, each bobcat has a unique pattern of speckles on the legs going down, like they're wearing these little leggings, spotted leggings. You can always pick this out on trail cam images or images posted on social media. Immediately identifies it as a bobcat. And they are now common in Rhode Island. I didn't say that here, but they were extirpated from Rhode Island, and now they're back. Okay, that ends the carnivores.